Jack Reyes hadn't stepped inside a diner like this in 11 years. Chrome stools, the smell of burnt coffee, a bell above the door that jingled too cheerfully for a man carrying what he carried. He sat in the corner booth, the one facing the exit, because old habits never really leave a soldier's body, even when the war does. In his jacket pocket was a photograph, folded so many times the crease had turned white, 6 young faces squinting into desert sunlight, arms slung over each other's shoulders, none of them knowing yet which of them would come home. If you've ever lost someone you couldn't save, you already know what this story is about, so stay with me, because what happens next in this diner will remind you why some wounds take years to become gifts. The waitress who approached his table moved with a quiet efficiency, pouring his coffee without being asked, refilling it before it went cold. She had a small white scar along her jaw, barely visible unless the light hit it right, and something in the way she scanned the room, quick, methodical, cataloging exits, made Jack's chest tighten. He'd seen that same scan 1,000 times, in briefing rooms, in convoys, in men and women trained to notice danger before it noticed them. "You're staring," she said, not unkindly, setting down a plate he hadn't ordered. "Sorry," Jack said. "You just remind me of someone." He didn't know why he did it. Maybe it was the coffee, or the ache that never fully left his knee where shrapnel had once lived, or simply 30 years of carrying grief that finally needed somewhere to go. He reached into his jacket and unfolded the photograph, sliding it across the table like a confession. "This was my team," he said, "in Iraq, 2011. We lost our medic in an ambush outside Ramadi. Never found enough of her to bring home. I've carried this picture every day since, because she was the reason 3 of us are still breathing." The waitress went still. Her hand, which had been wiping the counter in slow circles, stopped completely. She picked up the photograph with both hands, the way you'd hold something that might shatter, and her eyes moved across each face until they landed on the woman kneeling in the front row, medic's bag slung across her chest, laughing at something just out of frame. "That's me," she whispered. Jack felt the floor tilt beneath him. "That's not possible," he said. "You died. We had a funeral. I spoke at it." "I know," she said, and now her hands were shaking. "I was pulled out unconscious, presumed dead in the chaos, and by the time I woke up in a field hospital 3 countries away, the paperwork had already gone through. I was burned, unrecognizable, in a coma for weeks. When I finally came back to myself, I learned everyone I loved had already buried me. I was ashamed of how I looked, ashamed I hadn't fought to correct the record sooner, and the longer I stayed silent, the harder the truth became to tell. So I changed my name. I disappeared into an ordinary life, because I didn't know how to walk back into a world that had already grieved me and say, actually, I'm still here." Jack didn't speak. He couldn't. He simply stood, walked around the counter, and wrapped his arms around a woman he had mourned for over a decade, a woman whose hands had once pressed against his bleeding side and refused to let him go. She cried into his shoulder, and he cried into hers, and for a moment neither of them were soldier or waitress, hero or ghost. They were simply 2 people who had survived something unspeakable and finally found their way back to each other. If this story moved you even a little, that's not an accident. It's what happens when courage refuses to stay buried, when the people who saved us turn out to be closer than we ever imagined. Somewhere out there, someone you love may be carrying a silence like hers, waiting for the courage to say, "I'm still here." So hold on to the people who saved you. Reach out to the ones you've lost touch with. And if this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a reminder that miracles still walk into diners wearing name tags. Subscribe. Tell us in the comments who you'd want to find again. And never stop believing that some goodbyes were never meant to be final.